Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Come on in and find your seats. Thank you for joining me this evening. My name is Mr. Aegis. I will be your teacher for the lesson. I'm a health teacher, and I stream first-time playthroughs, indie, classic, retro games, first-time playthroughs, and I give health and wellness lessons like this one. We do all kinds of topics like sleep health, social media health, nutrition, supplementation. But tonight we're going to be talking about something for Valentine's Day, which is tomorrow. But yes, indeed, class, our lesson is now on the myth of the love languages. We're going to talk about what they are, why they're so popular, what experts and the research says about them, and maybe what we can do that's a little bit better. Our first question, though, as we start the lesson proper. Have you heard of this concept? Have you heard of the concept of the love languages? No? Yes? Maybe you don't know what love is at all? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. So some of you have heard about it, some of you haven't, which is the perfect mix we're looking for. But the other question, though, since we have that option of what is love, what is love? I'm not asking as a joke. I mean, I'm asking, what's love? What do you think love is? What do you think it means? Kind of important for us to know what that is if we're going to talk about languages to communicate it. And I know that's a pretty big question. I mean, it's something we've been grappling with for thousands and thousands of years. You say where you care deeply about someone who is close and important to you. I think that's a pretty solid definition. Ralsei suggests a chemical reaction to make sure we get things preggers. Lorraine says a kind of mild temporary insanity. I feel like that's a quote. Batham references What's Love Got to Do With It by Tina Turner. What is it, Cher, that has the song Life After Love? There are different kinds of love, Anomalisa correctly says. Money can't buy it. Nope. Money cannot buy happiness, but it can certainly buy yourself out of the conditions that make it harder to be happy. Is my answer to that common refrain. All right, so there's some solid ideas about what love might be. Let's get into the love languages more specifically. Well, what is this topic? Well, the love languages comes from a book written by a religious author named Gary Chapman. The book was written in 1992, simply called The 5 Love Languages, and it was on the bestseller list for a full year, about 50 weeks. Very long time. And it's frequently back on the bestseller list when a new edition comes out. Well, that's when you were born, fan. Well, in this book, he categorized the different ways that he felt people communicated their romantic intentions or ideas or feelings. But Chapman did not have a background in relationship science or counseling or therapy or psychology or really anything else. It was simply his ideas, his thoughts about how relationships worked and how people communicated in them while he was working for a place called Calvary Baptist Church. And it was his first book. He had never written anything else. But it did spread rapidly, and it has very strong continuing popularity. But given that background, the basis of the work is unsurprisingly rooted in and I'm simply going to describe this descriptively and not judgmentally, it's a fundamentalist, evangelical, and Protestant Christian marriage perspective. In broad strokes, this book, the core of it, categorizes the communication methods into 5 types, along with a lot of his thoughts and ideas and beliefs about romance. But even though this was specifically about romance, as you see the book here, it's since been adapted to a whole host of other ideas and topics, like the 5 love languages of children, or the 5 love languages of business, the 5 love languages of the gym, of marketing, the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. People just adapting this generalized concept to just about everything, which feels very strange to me, but it's what people do. What are they? What are the love languages? I think some of you know. They're the idea that people have a particular and categorizable, definable way that they express, receive, love that is more valuable or effective to them than other ways of expressing it to them. The 5 love languages of lining your pockets with this grift, Rao says, and that's very true. You could probably write almost any book with this concept. In fact, I think I saw a paper that referenced the 5 love languages of training proctologists or something like that. And I'm not making a joke of like, proctology exam. People have applied this concept to a whole lot of stuff. But it's kind of like Zen in the art of motorcycle riding, if you've heard of that one. But the languages themselves are, number 1, receiving and giving gifts. Number 2, quality time. Number 3, acts of service. Number 4, physical touch. And number 5, words of affirmation. Or how you say the 5 love languages of ignoring this bad p-value. That's more relevant than you might think. 5 love languages of high thetan content. This kind of does seem like a thing Scientology would put together. Let's dive a little bit deeper into each of these specifically first, before we tear them apart. Number 1, receiving gifts, or what he called visual symbols of love. Visible, tangible symbols of someone's love and appreciation for you. It's said that if you feel appreciated when someone thinks of you enough to get you a gift, your love language may be this one. Or if you feel like giving someone a gift is how you show your feelings for them, that's how you express love, it says. So is this you? Do you think, just off the bat, off the top of your head, without any other context, do you think that this is you? Does it match you and your experiences? Do you say that you're a receiving gifts type of person? Ralsei and Batham both love giving away gifts. I feel like that. Rao is a no on gifts generally. It just ends up being more stuff you have to organize. Annalisa gets anxious with gifts. I think that's reasonable. All right, so some mixed results about gifts. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people love to give gifts. All right, well, what about the second one? Quality time. Rao, you have a bracelet from your best friend forever, your BBBFF. You've only taken it off for TSA and surgery. Well, I mean, you might not have to take it off for TSA anymore either. So quality time, described as when you feel most valued, when your partner or whoever wants to spend their time around you and give you their attention. So is this one you? Do you feel like quality time is what makes you feel most valued and appreciated and loved, or the way that you want to express it to someone? Ralsei would say that this one is them. Melissa does like some quality time. I think it's hard to say no about this one at all. Yeah, Ivy, how could you have a relationship if this one isn't important to you? So what about the third one? Acts of service. This one is usually sort of described as chores, That's usually how people conceive of it. Like cooking for someone, doing the dishes, taking out the trash, doing the laundry. Errands, sharing the workload. Or if you get upset when you see that someone could help you and they don't. Is this one you? Ultimate fan, you say you've taken the test before and it has changed for you over time? Camel suggests that it's a good conversation starter at least. Anomalisa likes doing the dishes for someone. Dishes and laundry are just terrible, so Rao, you would prefer to do something special. You're terrible at cooking, but you love to. It's the thought that counts, as they say. And so what about the next one? Physical touch. Well, with all different kinds of touch, as shown here. Physical touch, of course, in most people's eyes, when they hear about it, they immediately think of physical intimacy, sex. But it, of course, also includes any other kind of physical affection. Do you think that's you in terms of giving or receiving? Elsie likes nibbles, and yes, I imagine that would count as physical touch. Cuddlers gonna cuddle. Physical touch is okay, Duco says, as long as both parties give their consent. Perfectly said. Much cuddles. Right, so what about the last one? Words of affirmation. So, compliments. Verbally appreciating someone. Praise. Notes and letters. Sort of basic, but, affirming things about the person that you appreciate. Their behaviors, their attributes, or affirming the things that they do for you. Actively communicating your appreciation for them in some way. You don't know how to respond when someone gives you those kinds of affirmations, Mew? I think that's relatable. Rao, you're suspicious of certain types of compliments? Yeah. I wonder sometimes if people are genuine or they're just being nice. All right, well, some interesting responses. Some of you have taken this test before, it seems, and is most common on the internet. It's paired responses. You get two statements and you pick which one you most resonate with, and then you add them up at the end. So like, number one would be, I like to receive notes of affirmation from you, or I like it when you hug me. Which of those two would you affirm most strongly? This can be hard for people to pick one, right? Like, gosh, I really like both of those things. But that's what they ask you to do. Like this one, I value your praise and try to avoid your criticism. I mean, yeah. Or several inexpensive gifts mean more to me than one large expensive gifts. I don't know. But I would find it really hard to just pick one of these. But they are, even in the long run, it's broken down kind of like this, where you get a couple of different sayings or statements, and then you pick one. You would think it's more meaningful when one thing over another. And then the one that you have the most responses positively for, that's apparently your love language. Now, you might disagree with what I'm about to talk about, with what I'm about to say, and that's fine. We're going to talk about why it blew up. We're going to talk about why it continues to be extremely popular. We'll go into whether or not we have love languages. That'll be point number one. We'll discuss whether or not there are 5. That'll be point 2. And then we'll go into, does it actually help? And that'll be point 3. Because if we were analyzing any, theory, what are its main points? What is it mostly trying to say? And the 3 things that the love languages sort of rest on are A, that we have love languages. This is a thing. There are these definable categories of ways that we communicate. The second is that there are 5 of them. and it names and defines those 5. And lastly, that speaking your partner's love language is better for your relationship. Those are the 3 areas that would need to be shown if this theory, this idea of the love language were to be valid. That they exist, that there are 5 and that these are the 5, and that it helps a relationship. So the first one, why did it blow up? Why is it so popular? How did it get so big? Why is it so massive? Why has it made so many millions of dollars and sold so many millions of copies? Why is it everywhere? Well, number 1, it's short and snappy. It's easy to remember, right? It's a short, snappy list. You can communicate them very easily. It also sounds legit. It's pop psychology. And not all pop psychology is necessarily wrong, but it sounds like psychology. And of course, it involves categorization, and people love that. People love to put themselves and each other into boxes. We pretend as a society that we don't like that. We pretend that we don't like to be put in boxes and that it's bad to put people in boxes or generalize them. But we do it, and we kind of love it. We love our MBTI, we love our horoscopes, we love our Harry Potter house. We love being categorized. It gives us a sense of identity. But Anomalisa Keys points out really well that for something as abstract and personal as love/romantic relationships, maybe it's not the best idea. Ivy suggests it's an outsourcing of compatibility. This science-y thing told us we'd be perfect together, or maybe terrible together. Of course, since it's about love, it's about romance, it's pretty important. People find that topic to be very important in their lives, so love sells. And lastly, it came at just the right time. That early 90s into mid-90s era, there was an explosion of self-help books, explosion of the sort of new age pop-psych. So it was just a perfect storm of all of these areas. But even all of this still doesn't really explain how this sort of became a wildfire and spread everywhere, how it's ubiquitous and has become its own metaphor. People use the phrase love languages. I've seen this taught in health classes. I've seen the love languages taught in public school health classes. But all of these above things said, they don't necessarily mean something is incorrect. So we'll go into it more deeply. Is there truth to this notion that so many millions of other relationship gurus have given advice about? But there are a million unlicensed relationship therapists still using them and still even being taught in schools. But has there really been any empirical study about it? Well, why is it stuck around so much? Why is it still so persistent? Because it's perfect for the internet. It's perfect for the internet. This is rapidly spreadable, it's easily digestible, it's perfect for memes, as Nomi points out. It's quick, it's fun. You can take a little quiz online and get your result. And then you can talk about, hey, I'm whatever your result is, and share it with others. It gives a really convenient shorthand for things. You can conveniently and quickly say that hey, I like to give and get gifts. And the terms are very common. They're easy to understand. They're not jargon or slang from psychology terms. So yeah, the internet made this probably likely to stick around forever. But it is sort of like junk food. It is junk food for relationship science. It's quick, it's fun, it's sugary or salty. But we do have to answer then the 3 pillars, the 3 things that hold this theory up Number one, do they actually exist? Do love languages actually exist as a concept? Well, most people endorse multiple love languages when pressed about them. Study said a person's forced choice primary love language does not surface as their highest rated love language on the continuous measure. What does that mean? Well, it means that most people endorse multiple love languages. They don't just say that one is them. They say, well, I'm kind of this and a little of this. And many of them say, well, all of them. I like all of them, or I like to do all of them. Preferences can also shift. You might like one love language at one point in your life, and then it changes to something else over time. But when people are made to pick just one, when they're told, well, you can't pick multiple and you can't say that you like all, pick one. Pick one that you think is most you. When they do that, it doesn't end up being matched with their open-ended test results. For example, in one study, Polk et al., 2006, almost no one picked gifts as their love language when they had to choose just one. Almost no one picked that. The giving of gifts or the receiving of gifts. Almost no one picked that one as their love language. But when they went through the agree/disagree series of questions, gifts was rated highest. Well, do love languages exist? Well, if they do, most people seem to have multiple or all of them. And if they do have to pick just one, it doesn't match up with the test results. And if they do exist, why did no one else ever figure this out over the course of the last 5,000 years of human civilization, give or take? Ultimate, you ask, was the test done in the United States, and which country? That could potentially have something to do with the results. It's a very good point, actually, and we'll talk about some of that potential issue with cultural relevance to people. Point 2, though, says, are there 5 languages? For this theory to be valid, it would have to be the case that love languages exist and they're real, and that there would have to be these 5. And how did Chapman arrive at these 5? How did he figure out that these are the 5? Well, I don't know. Nobody knows, because he just decided that these were the 5. And 5 is sort of the perfect number for a list. What the research says is that these aren't distinct enough. They overlap too much, which is why so many people endorse multiple. Can you think of some of these that might overlap with each other? Or how these might be split? I think, and the research suggests, that these are not the only major expressions of love. These are not the only major ways that someone could communicate that. Rao suggests that time and service go pretty much hand in hand. I would say that's true. Acts of service and gifts could also be the same thing, Ivy says. And I think these could also be broken up more. One of these expressions might be divided into multiple things. There could be many more. But what Chapman did was top-down. He described a style that he made up, or defined, and then made a test that says, well, you figure out which one of these that you are. The research suggests, though, that these should be bottom-up. You start by asking people what they do and don't like in relationships, and work from there, rather than saying, this is a language of love, is this you? Some others that people have found in research are how well your partner, quote, integrates you into their broader social network. Well, what does that mean? It's how well they put you into the rest of their life. A big one that people find in research as another love language, if they exist, is conflict management. Is conflict management not a way of expressing your love for someone? How well you manage any differences you have with that person? How did he arrive at these 5 languages? We don't really know, apart from his own religious background. What about the third one? Does this even work? When people apply this method, or they're consciously thinking about their love languages, does it work? Rao suggests it's kind of like painting the bullseye around the arrow. Bingo. Does this work? Well, the research suggests that there is a little support for a match or mismatch having higher or lower satisfaction. Study on this, though, is still pretty limited, because when you have a hard time figuring out if people even have a main love language, and whether or not these are the languages that people use, it's going to be hard to figure out if it works. But when we have been able to contrast relationships where people seem to match or mismatch, there hasn't really been any meaningful difference in the relative success of those relationships. None of the studies, quote, found empirical support that couples in which partners match or mismatch in their primary love language report a higher relationship satisfaction. That's from Bland and McQueen, 2018. What they find, though, is that doing any of these things increases relationship satisfaction. If you're making a conscious effort to do any of these things, it will improve your relationship. Whether or not that person endorses that particular type of communication as their favorite or not. Preference has little effect, it seems. It does sort of seem like putting that square peg in a round hole. Ivy says, I feel if you interact in any way, shape, or form with someone, you're going to be doing some of them inevitably. Very true. So let's sync this pop-psych. Let's put the 8-ball in. Sarija et al. Said, factorial analysis showed that the 5-factor solution was not supported, and love language compatibility did not affect couples' marital satisfaction. Popular psychology concepts need to be under the scrutiny of scientific investigation. Flicker and Sancier Barbosa, just in 2025, said that participants' satisfaction with their partner's primary love language behavior no better predicted relationship satisfaction or perceived love than the lower-ranked love languages. Impet, Park, and Muis, 2023 said, in conclusion, perhaps the ironic lesson learned from evaluating the popular, yet now empirically debunked concept of love languages is that researchers need to speak science in a language that the public can more readily connect with and understand. Polk, 2013, said that of special note is the finding that behavioral discrepancies offer more explanatory power than the behaviors themselves. And Bunt and Hazelwood in 2017 said that results provided limited evidence that love language alignment promotes satisfaction. Self-regulation contributed greater variance in satisfaction. So, the science says no. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about before moving on to other uses or perhaps other better methods, we need to address the elephant in the room, and that is Chapman himself. He's a dubious individual. And I'll relay this one particular story to describe that. One reader who believed in his method, we'll call her Anne, asked him, is it possible to love someone you hate? Because she felt used, not loved during sex. He told her that her husband's love language must be touch, and that his secondary love language must be affirmation. So he told her to affirm him and to stop all verbal complaints, take more initiative in sex, and surprise him by being more sexually aggressive. He cited the Bible and told her that she can love someone she doesn't like. This was a yikes moment for a lot of people. But this is really the underpinning of his ideology. We have to remember that this is rooted in a particular belief system about love and romance and its purpose and the roles in relationships. And yes, Rao, the mask fell off real quick. But is there still some use to the concept? Is there still some value in the idea of the love languages? We know that people probably don't have a love language, that it's just too difficult to define, and that they overlap so much, and that they could be broken down into more discrete possibilities. And the research suggests it doesn't really seem to work in relationship satisfaction. Is there still some use for it? Let's break it down. Receiving gifts. Well, of course, receiving gifts is a way that people can express their appreciation. I think that kind of goes without saying. Sure, that's a way someone can make you feel appreciated. But it has a huge thing to do with the who, what, when, where, and why. Who the gift is from seems to make the most difference. Let's say that I grew up without very much. Let's say I grew up poor, like I did. So when I grow up and I'm in a relationship, when someone sacrifices out of what they have to give something to me, it might mean a lot. It might make me feel really appreciated. It might make me feel really validated and valued if someone were to sacrifice to give me something. But maybe I only like practical gifts. Maybe growing up without much makes me value a useful, practical gift. But if someone gives me something of luxury, I think that that's wasteful and useless. Would receiving gifts still be a love language for me? So Anomalisa Keys, you've experienced gift giving that was sincere and nice, and some that felt more like a grand gesture to show what an amazing guy I am. Right. It has a lot to do with who is giving you the gift and what the gift is. Do you like little gifts of luxury? I mean, I could have the same background, that same not having much background, but now I have maybe the opposite reaction. Maybe instead of feeling like I only want practical gifts now, maybe if someone gives me something of a little bit of luxury, I feel like, wow, I never got that growing up. Maybe that makes me feel even more appreciated than more practical gifts. The context makes all the difference. So if the gift, its value to you depends entirely on who gives it to you. Say someone who has a lot, well, it doesn't mean much if they're rich, versus someone giving me something who doesn't have very much of their own. If it matters who and what the gift is and when they give it to you and why they gave it to you, is it really useful to categorize this? Or do all of the gifts need to be taken into their context? Is it even the gift that matters? Does the giving or receiving of gifts really even matter as a category when it's everything else about it that actually matters? Duco says gifts are an option, not a requirement. Yeah, you don't have to do that to communicate your appreciation. And I think, personally, some people will not endorse the receiving of gifts as their love language because they don't want to seem selfish. Right? Like if you're told, what's your love language? I mean, I don't want to seem like I want people to give me gifts. It's like when you are asked to take a poll and you don't want to pick the poll options that make you seem, I don't know, bad or selfish. Obviously, you'd take something like quality time instead. But speaking of quality time, I find that one maybe the most puzzling. As Ivy mentioned earlier, if you care about someone, I mean, you're going to want to spend time with them regardless. And what does quality time mean to a person? I'm a pretty solitary person, so it's not like I need a lot of my partner's time. But even a person like me needs emotional support sometimes, and when I get in a funk, that person being there for me would mean far more than a dozen times that would be longer in any other period of time. But if I asked you what quality time means to you, what would your answer be? Seeing a movie? Going for a walk? What would it be? Parallel play, Nomi suggests, and that's very true of many people. Just being able to sit in silence with someone, right? You don't even have to be doing anything for it to be quality time. But it can be very different depending on the partner. Maybe things that you like to do with someone are very different than the things you like to do with a different partner. Maybe one partner is someone that you find quality time with is more important, or another partner, you can spend more time apart from them. Your past or present partner's inattentiveness can very much influence that as well. Maybe naturally you don't really have a big need for quality time, but in a previous relationship, someone was inattentive, didn't spend a lot of time with you, and now you have a craving for it. You feel like it's more important. Or when someone does give you it, it feels really good. Hey, I didn't get this from my previous relationship. Maybe a past partner gave you just the right amount of their time and just the right amount of space, and now your present partner isn't quite doing that. But they thought it was your love language. Maybe you told them that quality time was your love language, or you thought that it was your love language, because you were getting just the right amount of quality time with a previous partner. So your current partner does everything they can to spend as much time as possible with you, but you feel suffocated. You feel like they're around you too much. Well, they're just trying to give you what you told them you wanted. You put yourself in that box. Of course, we have to talk about physical touch. Naturally, people tend to think that this is just about sex. But this has a huge variety of meanings for basically everyone. One person might enjoy sex and find it is a great expression of love, but they may not be very comfortable with other types of physical affection. Maybe they don't like public displays of affection. Maybe they don't like being touched very much. They may enjoy sex. That might be something they appreciate as a expression of love, but they're not very touchy-feely outside of it. Or it could be the opposite. It may be that they enjoy giving their partner physical affection, sexual or physical affection, but they don't find it all that important to themselves. And trauma does have a big role to play in that. And motivations have a big role to play too. Motivations for wanting physical touch, or trying to give physical touch because you think that's someone's love language. You want to satisfy that partner's need if you think that that's what they want. Getting back to Chapman, a lot of his work places heavy emphasis on this, and we have to remind ourselves that yes, the emphasis was also placed primarily on the woman to provide physical touch to their partner. It also skews towards putting men in the box that this is their love language. That they will preferentially want this, and that they aren't getting enough of it. There are cultural considerations that are not really made. Different cultures consider physical touch to have different meaning. And his work heavily biased on gender. His cultural and social considerations are very important because what's considered appropriate or comfortable or uncomfortable can change. But in either case, it can lead to one partner feeling compelled to provide intimacy or physical touch, or their partner's going to be dissatisfied. And the partner could also be influenced by past experience. How much does this matter to you, though? How important is it to you to feel validated in the realm of physical touch? Because people may be missing out on good partners when their comfort level with intimacy with that person could very well change as the relationship grows. Because one final point, you might not find physical touch with a partner to be all that important at first. Maybe that becomes very important to you with that person later on. But maybe they think, well, they don't care about physical touch that much. That's not one of their love languages. There are other problems. You probably figured out my position on this issue. But I don't just think that this concept is a harmless, benign little online quiz that tells you which Dawson's Creek character you are. I believe it leads to some stereotyping, and it is self-reinforcing. Teaching people that they're in a particular box makes them expect certain things from a partner. I don't really like that it's taught to young people, that it's still even taught in health classes. I've clashed with other teachers about this. It can lead to compelled expressions, people feeling like they need to speak in a particular language, like they need to express their love to someone in the way that that person wants. And then those expressions can be insincere. They're not really doing it because they love doing it. They're doing it because they think that's what you want. It can also lead to something that is referred to as relationship scorekeeping. Sort of like, well, I did this for you when I know that's the kind of thing you like. Are you going to reciprocate? Or I've given you sex all this time. You know, when do I get my preferred love language communicated to me? It also leads to people thinking that they can have quick fixes for an issue in their relationship. Hey, you know, we're having trouble in a relationship. I know that they like gifts. I'll get them that Mercedes. Exactly. It can make people think, well, we're having trouble. I'll just do something that I think fits their love language, and that will help us out. People may also discount or devalue the wrong types. They may think that, well, my partner's love language or love languages are A and B. I'm not going to waste my time doing C for them, even though that might be the perfect thing at that time. They may also lead to people fixating on those love languages and missing other expressions. Someone might do something for them in a quote-unquote language that isn't their favorite, so they're not really looking for it. And lastly, it can lead to confusion like, why didn't it work? I did something for them in what I thought was their love language, and they didn't really respond. It didn't seem to matter to them that much. Did I do something wrong? Is there something wrong in our relationship? Why didn't it work? Your needs can change over time. The relationship, as it grows, might lead to you wanting and needing different things. Different partners may find you looking for different things from them. Just because one partner made you feel very validated with, say, gifts, you yourself might not find that gifts matter to you that much from someone else. It might just not mean that much coming from someone else, or it might mean even more. And Ivy's got it right on the head. People want different things at different times, at different stages of their relationship. It's moment by moment, and it all matters what the context is. So let's recap. Yeah, there's little evidence that we have love languages. There doesn't seem to be any inherent language that we speak. I mean, language itself is pretty insane when you think about it. Communicating with words or gestures or anything. There really isn't any underlying specific language that we use. And you know, Ralsei, you say that, how can language be real if our eyes aren't real? That isn't actually all that weird a thing to say. Like, there's no inherent, inborn, genetically predisposed concept of a love language. And the languages themselves are arbitrary. They were just made up from one guy's brain, and they were made top down. Decided that these were the languages, and then asks people to pick which one they think they are. And lastly, there really isn't that much backing that they work when you try to use them, when you focus on them, try to figure out what yours is, and try to match with your partner. It can lead to putting each other in boxes and stereotyping people. It can lead to confusion as to how can I validate my partner's feelings for me, my feelings for them. It can reinforce outdated gender and social norms. It really only takes one social and cultural view into consideration. People may miss good relationships with people because they don't think that they're a match. They may become fixated on what the right way is to express love. It can lead to relationship scorekeeping. And there's within language variation. That is, the context is king. Which leads me to the question that we seem to ask a lot. What is to be done? If this doesn't work, what else should we do? What works better? Nothing. Nomi says, well, yes, there is something. And what I'm going to discuss is one particular way by a relationship scientist, a researcher named John Gottman, a psychologist and the founder of the Gottman Institute, who wrote, "My general conclusion is that these dimensions, the love languages, are not very distinct conceptually, nor are they very important in terms of accounting for variation in marital happiness and sexual satisfaction." His response was to create this. The Gottman Method, the Sound Relationship House. Unlike the love language model, which doesn't really teach any relationship skills, the Gottman Method is a combination of exercises and ongoing practices, and also talks about dealing with conflict. It starts with building a base. The first stage of this method is creating a love map. It's a shared exercise where you answer questions about each other and learn about each other's inner lives, so you can get a deeper understanding of the things they like, the things they dislike, their personal experiences. It has a particular series of questions that's given in it. You really figure out that person's map. The places that they like, things they dislike. The next layer of the house is fondness and admiration. This is based on the idea that there are two opposing feelings in a relationship: fondness and contempt. The antidote to contempt is expressing the ways in which you admire the person, which not only makes them feel validated, it reminds you of the reasons that you like them. And contempt arises all the time. It just happens. People will annoy you. Next is the idea of turning towards instead of turning away. That means that you're always on the lookout for ways that your partner is trying to connect. And then responding. Even if it's to tell them that you can't do something, or that that's not something you like, but that you appreciate them wanting to. Never let them reach out and find nothing there. When there is an attempt made by your partner to reach out to you in some way, to communicate in whatever quote-unquote language, that you turn towards it and not away. Next is making sure that you have a positive perspective on the relationship, that is, assuming good intentions. Actively noting the positive attributes about your partner and yourself to build your own self-worth, and acknowledging that your partner likes you for a reason and that you're enough. You're worth it. And then, of course, managing conflict. Conflict happens in any relationship. When it happens, you want to have a plan, a goal-oriented approach that makes the conflicts manageable. Being proactive, never letting a conflict fester. Speaking up about what you're feeling, but doing so in a constructive way. You're trying to come to an understanding and not win an argument. Conflict can be functional. It can bring out your needs, your feelings. Conflict arises when there's some disconnect between what you need, what you want, and what you're getting. And sharing goals. You want to share in, or if not sharing in, support your partner's goals. Actively talk to them about your dreams, your aspirations, the things that you're hoping for. And lastly, creating shared meaning. I like this one. This is about developing little things that mean something to just you two. Little rituals that you do together. Your weekly walk in the park, your favorite shared movie. The habits that you develop together. Your inside jokes. The things that you share that are special to your relationship. How you celebrate holidays together. Your little traditions. It's your story. Shared meaning is about creating your story together. Our memory works on the stories that we tell each other, the stories that we tell ourselves. Our feelings are built on the internal stories that we tell ourselves about the things that have happened to us. It's the narrative of your lives together as a couple. When a sports team lines up, they're all in the same uniform. They have the same mascot, the same logo. Their fans chant the same particular things. They have a shared history. The stadium plays songs during their breaks. The team and the fans have a shared meaning. They're very easily identified as being a part of a team. When you look at a person in a relationship, ask, does that person and their partner seem like they're a team? That's just a brief overview of the Gottman method, something you can look up and look into if you're seriously trying to improve your relationship, rather than taking an online quiz and hoping that that helps out. My bottom line, though, is something that you've been mentioning. This is the skill we're going to take away, since this is a skills-based class. We talked about a popular psychology idea of the love languages, broken down what it is, why it might not work so well, what the research says. Gave you a brief overview of something that might work better, but here's the takeaway. Tell someone when they do something that makes you feel appreciated. Consider the context of it, and remember that. Someone does something for you that made you feel appreciated, whether it would be categorized as words of affirmation or quality time or acts of service, whatever it was. If it made you feel appreciated, tell them it did. And then think to yourself, what was going on? They did something for me, say, something that the love languages would have called an act of service. It made me feel appreciated. Why? Maybe you were under a lot of stress at the time. You had a lot of work on your plate, and they did something for you, and that's why it mattered so much. Maybe acts of service doesn't really matter to you much, except in that context. So remember that. Wow, I'm allergic to everything in this dish. If I eat it, I will die. But I see the effort that went into it, and I appreciate you doing it. Yes. Yes. Someone makes you feel appreciated, let them know. You don't normally care much for physical affection, and you're not a public displays of affection kind of person, but you just needed that hug at that particular time. Your partner picked up on that and gave you what you needed. Tell them that it made you feel appreciated, and remember the context. But ask them if something that you did made them feel appreciated. You went out of your way to try to do something for someone, to speak their language, so to speak. Ask them if it made them feel appreciated, if they like that. If they say no, well, consider the context first before thinking, well, you screwed up or did something wrong. You wanted to spend quality time with them. They didn't seem to be very receptive, but ask them why. They just got a lot of stuff going on. Maybe they're just stressed out. Maybe they've been feeling suffocated. Maybe they would have appreciated it some other time. Ask them if it made them feel appreciated, and ask them why. And remember that. If something they didn't make you feel appreciated, tell them. And consider the context and remember it. Maybe something they did that was negative, well, there's a reason they did it. Remember that part. And don't just keep it to yourself if something they didn't make you feel appreciated. Tell them about it. Consider the context of why you didn't feel appreciated when they did that. And remember that fact. Tell them and ask them. Tell them, ask them, remember. Remember the things that you do that make them feel good. Remember the things that they do that make you feel good. So yes, in the end, what a shock. It is just communication and not some special formula or algorithm or theory. There isn't a magic bullet. There isn't a single theory. It's love. It doesn't have to make sense. You just have to tell the person. Because there's no quick fixes. There's no short, snappy set of lines or an online quiz that can tell you who you are or what you need. It might seem that the love languages are relatively harmless. Not much different than an online quiz that tells you what your Harry Potter house is. But it is strange that something that sounds like it came from a Cosmo magazine article became a 50 million best-selling institution that has more or less taken over relationship psychology. But unlike an online quiz that tells you what Pokemon type you are, this concept can give you some pretty skewed ideas about something very important. It shortchanges you. Your emotional needs are not categorizable, let alone into 5 little boxes. And not only are they fluid, they can change from moment to moment. Do I feel appreciated, Bags? Sometimes. And I think sometimes that's on me for not communicating. But our closing thoughts: reflect on the things that you need, and then communicate. What fulfills you or your partner's needs in one moment might not be what they need in another. Human emotional needs are very fluid. Oh, Sal is here to give me what I really need, which are spitballs. Meowdy. Yeah. Human emotional needs are fluid. Different challenges in life, new stages, growth in your relationship can all change what you want or need. We experience life moment to moment. Our emotional needs are also moment to moment. You put yourself in a box, you may not notice how your needs are changing. Take time regularly for introspection, for self-awareness. Communicate what you're learning about yourself with your partners. Because hopefully you're not static and you are changing and growing. So, that's all the information I have for you. And there's a lot. There's a lot to talk about. So let's go over our questions. What do you have? And that is then the completion of our love language lesson. Congratulations. I'll have your certificate for you if you want in the Discord, which of course is there now in the chat. This VOD will be available in our lessons playlist by the end of tomorrow, likely. Make sure, if you are not already, to give the channel a follow and the VODs channel so that you can see whenever we have new uploads. And I put shorts there sometimes as well, and our TikTok. You can follow those socials there. So that was our lesson on the love languages. I appreciate you being here and all the questions you asked, all the great comments you made. I hope you were able to learn a little bit about the topic and that your relationships will be even better in the future because of it. Thank you so much for watching this lesson. I hope you learned something useful and that you can apply it to improve your quality of life. If you liked what you saw, make sure to follow the channel and follow us on Twitch so you can join our lessons and games live. On the screen, you'll see links to our channel and our playlist of other lessons. Thank you again for watching and for supporting independent streaming and educational content. I hope to see you next time. Class dismissed.